Hi guys, and welcome to another video, and hello to the Sunderland fans. How are you doing? Still heartbroken? Same. But the show must go on. As a YouTuber, I need to continue making content for you guys, and of course put a smile on my face, even though I can quite comfortably say that I'm dying inside. But today, what we are going to be doing is we are going to be using one of these tier things that I've seen a lot of YouTubers use recently, so I thought I'd be a bit more mainstream with this video and try it myself. But what we're going to be doing is making a few tiers, and as you can see, here is our first team. Some of them are, of course, players that we've loaned this season, so these will be going into categories whether I'd like to see them back for to re-sign them and stuff like that. There's some players that are out on loan, like Robson, Embleton, stuff like that aren't in here, but I will discuss them towards the end of the video. But I will be placing all of our first team players into certain categories in the tier. So we have, at the top, we have keep at all costs. So obviously players that, regardless of what the situation, I want to see them stay at the club. Next is preferably stay, I don't think it's dead certain or we really should go out of our way to keep them as much as humanly possible, but players that I would prefer to stay, obviously. Next, not too bothered, whether they stay or go, I won't complain either way. And the last one, I could just put, players that I'd like to leave, but I will put get out of my house. Get out of my house. That is how that's how we'll label that. So first and foremost on the list we do have Bryan Oviedo. Now Oviedo for me, of course, is a very good player. I think for us the only thing is his wages. So he'll more than likely end up leaving anyway. I'd be very surprised if he did stay. So I'll put in maybe preferably stay because of course I'd like to see him here, but I don't really think he will, given his wages and the stature of his name and stuff like that. Next up we have Denver Hume. He's been out injured a couple of times, but he has impressed when he has been called upon. I would put him in keep at all costs because I think he's a long-term solution to our left-back position. Alim Ozturk, honestly, not too bothered whether he goes or of course he had a bit of a rocky start at the beginning of the season, but I think he could probably fill in and do some kind of a job, which he has proved towards the back end of the season. I do think he can do a job for us, even if it is a backup to another couple of centre-backs that we do hopefully bring in for next season. Next up, George Honeyman, bit of a controversial one. Again, I'm not too bothered. He will more than likely stay, but if he left, I wouldn't be too fussed either. I think if he is to stay, he would, for me, just be a squad player. I don't think he's that great of a player. He has his uses, but for me, I don't find him enough of a key player to stick him in, keep at all costs, or preferably stay. So I'm not too bothered what happens with George Honeyman. Now, Aidan McGeady is a player for me. He's probably 100% certain not to stay. But for me, if we can do it, if we can somehow financially achieve it, and McGeady wants to, of course, I will keep him at all costs because I think McGeady is the best player in League One for me, and he can just perform a moment of magic out of nowhere, and he can win your games when games are close, they're getting a bit scrappy. He can produce a moment of magic that not many players in this league can do. So for me, Aidan McGeady is keep at all costs. Now Max Power, I'd like to see him preferably stay. I don't mind Max Power at all. Charlie White for me, I'm not too bothered if he is to stay or is to go. Of course, towards the back end of the season, his performances improved marginally and he was growing in confidence. So if he does stay, I'm not going to complain about it. But for me, if he does leave, I'm not going to complain because he basically hasn't shown us the goods that we thought he was going to give us. Kaz Sterling, get out of my house, sir. There was no point in him even coming on loan, was there? We saw him in bits and pieces and he did look relatively impressive here and there, but I just don't think he's cut out for it. Now, Will Grigg, okay, so for me, it's definitely a keep at all costs. Now, that might surprise you because he hasn't set the world alight or set the world on fire, as you might want to say, for Will Grigg, and I do believe that he has come injured, pretty much. I don't think he's fully fit, and I don't think he's played, or Jack Ross hasn't found a system that suits him. But I think we're just sitting on an absolute goal machine with Will Grigg, but we just haven't utilised him properly. He has shown in spits and spurts. I look at him on, when we are playing, he makes some really good runs off the ball. We're not finding him, or we're hoofing the ball up to him as if he's Charlie White. He's not the biggest of players, but he's a very, very intelligent player, and he is a fox in the box, and he will score goals. And I think with a decent pre-season under his belt, hopefully he can prove to be our goal-scoring machine next season. So I do have a lot of high hopes for him next year, and I'll be very pissed off if it doesn't go well for him next year. But next up we have Donald Love, who, he's just famously shit, and so he needs to get out of my house. John McLaughlin, he's a keep at all costs. If there was any player, and I'll have to say this now, if I could only choose one player for keep at all costs, that would be John McLaughlin, because like I've said in a previous video, it is so difficult to find a consistent goalkeeper, and that is exactly what he is. Mr. Consistency. He's saved us countless times this season, and without him, we would have easily not even been in the playoffs this year. So an absolute must to keep him. Now Lee Cattermole is another player who I'd be really, really surprised if he did stay, because but the thing is, of course, his wages, we have to kind of get rid of him potentially anyway. But I would like to preferably see him stay, because he's really grown into it this year. I don't know whether he has just sort of found his level of recent years, because he hasn't been great over the last couple of years. But this season, he's really grown into it. He's scoring goals, he's contributing more, and he is a leader. So, if someone like Honeyman did leave, for me, Katz is the first man to go in there with the captain's armband. He definitely deserves it. Lyndon Gooch, he's only recently signed a new contract, so I'd be incredibly surprised if he did leave, but I wouldn't be too bothered, to be honest with you. I know he can produce moments of magic himself, but since he signed that contract, he's been absolutely horrendous. Probably one of our worst performers, really. So if he was to leave, someone come in with, £1 million, £2 million bid, if they somehow would, I'd accept it. I'd take the money and go for a better option. Dylan McGeoch, I'd preferably like him to stay. Again, he's another player, a bit like Will Grigg, that I don't believe has been utilised properly. I think he's a lot better than people think. He can control the midfield, and I think he is a player who can dictate the tempo of the play. A little bit like a lot of people seem to think that Grant Ledbetter has been doing. Like I've said, I do love Grant Ledbetter, and I've seen a lot of people say, but he dictates the play and his vision, and he picks out passes. That's what he used to do when he played for Sunderland, he did, but he hasn't really been that player since he has come back to us. It'd be ideal if he was, but he's not. He's aging and he's not quite that player. He definitely has his uses, Grant Ledbetter, but I don't think he's this player that a lot of people dress him up to be. Don't get me wrong, I think his experience is very useful for us. His set pieces are probably the best in the squad right now, so he does give his own dangers, Grant Ledbetter, but for me, Dylan McGeoch is that player that I think that can be that Grant Ledbetter, if you know what I mean. So for me, I'm kind of drifted off topic there. Yeah, Dylan McGeoch stays in, preferably stay. I will jump to Grant Ledbetter now because I've just spoken about him for ages. Grant Ledbetter, I will put in, I would like him to stay. I'll put him in preferably stay because I would like him to stay. I don't think he's definitely a keep at all costs. I think he will have taken a bit of a wage dive anyway just to join the club, which is really good of him, of course, because he would have been on a pretty hefty wage. So, I don't think it's bothering anyone. So, I don't mind him. I'd like him to stay. Maybe come on, a few set pieces here and there. Come in off the bench. And it'll be a good influence on the younger players as well. So, it'd be nice for Grant to stay. I do love the lad. Now, of course, next up, the king, Chris Maguire, keep at all costs. Because when he's playing and he's on form, and we've got the system right, he's unplayable. He's almost unplayable. His creativity and his work rate, and of course, he is a massive shithouse, which we love him for as well. But he's a winner. He's an absolute winner. He's a big game player. It's a shame he didn't turn up really in the playoff final, but he is usually a big game player. And he's just got that bit of spark in the final third that we desperately need. Tom Flanagan, for me, get out of my house. I don't rate him whatsoever. Unfortunately, I don't rate him at all. He'll have like one decent game followed by 10, 11, 12 poor games. And I don't understand how he can be selected so often when he's been so goddamn bad. He just makes so many errors and so many mistakes, so many misjudgments. If he left, I would not complain, but I want him to get out of my house. Now, Bali Mumba recently signed a contract as well, preferably stay. I think he's a decent player, he's a good player. I think for me, I'd probably send him out on loan next year. He did come in a few times, had a handful of appearances last season, and he did look pretty comfortable considering his age as well. He looked pretty comfortable. He definitely didn't do himself any wrong at all. But I think a nice, maybe a loan in League Two or somewhere like that for him and just get a full season under his belt, full of games. I think that would be really good for him. I don't think he should really be a starter next year for us. Adam Matthews, he can get out of my house as well because he's just piss poor for me. He's absolutely piss poor. He's been piss poor since we bought him, really, for me. Now, Morgan, of course, I don't think we will sign him. I don't think we will. But would I like him to stay? I would preferably like him to stay. I would, because I do like Morgan. I would like us to, to get another winger or two in with a bit more pace, but he's another very creative player, and that's something that we definitely need. Luke O'Nien, keep at all costs. And for me, next year, I hope he isn't still playing at right back. I hope he is pushed into the midfield because we need something different. Because the likes of Max Power, Grant Ledbetter, Catamol, they're all very, very similar players, and I think that we do need a more sort of attack-minded midfielder in the centre who can be a bit more creative from the centre rather than three holding midfielders like Jack Ross tried to play. But, for me, Luke O'Nien, an absolute keep at all cost player. Glenn Loovens, I probably end up retiring anyway or leaving, but get out of my house, Glenn. You seem a lovely man. I think you're pretty sure he is a lovely man, but he's way past it, and I think he's played, 3 games or something this year. Reece James, I do actually like him myself. I am a bit of a fan of James. Preferably stay, because I think he can do a job. He's won League One before. He did get his injury, which disrupted his run in the team. But for me, he can do a job, and I think he's a useful player, so I would like him to stay. Don, for me, I think it's almost certain that he's not going to be coming back anyway. But he either has a terrible, terrible game or a brilliant one. But for me, get out of my house. I've decided for Don. Now, Reuter is another player who, as a person, I think he's got a fantastic attitude. Seems like a decent lad, but he's already said that he's going to be leaving the club, or it's already been confirmed. So I'll just put him in get out of my house. Duncan Watmore, for me, I've always had a massive amount of respect for him. He's had such trouble with his injuries, but for me, I would want Duncan Watmore to leave because I think he looked so promising earlier in his career, and even when he has come back, he just doesn't do the job for me. I think his decision making is very, very poor. His first touch is very poor as well. I think the only thing he does have is that he's very unpredictable when he's running at defenders, because I think half the time he can't predict what he's going to do because his touch is so bad and it goes anywhere and it can catch defenders off guard and what have you. But I just don't think Duncan Watmore is. I don't think he's capable of producing, to be honest with you. But I love the lad. I love his attitude. He's a really good lad. But for me, get out of my house. But lastly, we do have Jack Baldwin. For me, it's difficult because I'm basically leaving us with one centre back. But I think we basically brought him in. I think we pretty much brought him in on reputation because he was the captain at Peterborough, and Peterborough weren't a bad team last year and what have you, and we managed to get him on a free. But he has impressed in spits and spurts. He was half decent towards the beginning of the season, and then I think his vulnerabilities started to show quite massively and dramatically come the back end of the season, where he was constantly getting dropped. He was in and out the side, and I don't think he kicked a ball for the last sort of 10 games because Ozturk kicked him out, and that says something. So for me, for Baldwin, I'd probably put in not too bothered if he leaves or doesn't, because he can produce, he can, but I think towards the early stage of the season, he saved us countless times with loads of last-ditch challenges, but on the same, it swings and roundabouts, he's also probably dropped us quite a few points as well with a lot of mistakes. So that is it for me, guys. Keep at all costs. We have Denver Hume, Aidan McGeady, Will Grigg, John McLaughlin, Chris Maguire, Luke O'Nien. Preferably stay. We have Oviedo, Max Power, Lee Catamol, Dylan McGeoch, Grant Ledbetter, Barley Mumba, Morgan, Reece James. In not too bothered, we have Ozturk, Honeyman, Wyke, Gooch, and Baldwin. Get out of my house. We have Sterling, we have Love, we have Flanagan, Matthews, Loovens, Dunn, Reuter, and Duncan Watmore. Now, I did mention at the beginning of the video, we have Embleton out on loan or will be returning. We have Robson as well. We have Molyneux, Kimpioka as well, who, I know Kimpioka's not out on loan, but apparently his contract is running out. For me, I'm a massive, massive fan of Benji Kimpioka, but if he's going to play funny buggers, and it's rumoured that he does have the same agent as Joe Lasoro as well, so for me, if he ends up going down that route, then, bye Benji. But personally, I think he is a very good player and he has potential to be an even better player. So I'd love to see Benji Kimpioka stay. So for me, I would have put Benji in preferably stay. Now for Robson, and Molineux, for me, I don't think the pair are good enough. I've seen them maybe send them both back out on loan, or maybe send Robson back out on loan, but for me, I don't think Molineux is good enough. The only player who I would like to see in and around the side is Embleton, because I think he has bags and bags of potential. He's proved it, with the England youth teams and what have you. And I've seen bits and pieces of him, and he's a creative player. He can make things happen. Maybe not as his starting 11 player, but someone maybe to come off the bench every now and then. I think Embleton could probably do a job next year or next season. So yeah, that is everything. Do you agree? Do you not agree? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and maybe even let me know in the comments who you keep at all costs, preferably stay, not too bothered, or get out of my house. But if you have enjoyed this video, guys, please hit the like button for me. It'd be massively, massively appreciated. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already to become a fully fledged member of the Sarny Army. But for now, you take care and stay jammy.